From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. The promise of the weather phenomenon known as El Niño. Now, don't let this week's spring snowstorm fool you. Mountain snowpack across Colorado's high country is dismal, and much of the state is in a severe drought, which means less water in reservoirs and dry conditions that are ripe for wildfires this summer. One potential bright spot, forecasters are predicting an especially strong El Niño in the months ahead. El Niño is a climate pattern that can reshape weather across the West, bringing badly needed rainstorms. But how soon will it get here? And are we pinning too many hopes on El Niño? To find out, we reached out to Russ Schumacher. He's the Colorado State climatologist and professor of atmospheric science at Colorado State University. And he was actually in pretty good spirits as our conversation got going. You know, as we're talking, we actually have some snow on the ground right now. How much are you celebrating this May snowstorm?
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of storm we've been waiting and hoping for months and months. It isn't going to make up all of our deficits in precipitation and snow by any means, but it's very welcome. And there's a lot of moisture in this storm here in Fort Collins. This is the biggest 2-day precipitation event we've had in over 3 years. And so, you know, it's a meaningful amount of precipitation, even though we've still got a long way to go to make up the big deficits that we've built up over the last 6 to 9 months.
Sure. So weather forecasters say there could be some relief on the horizon with a potential El Niño developing. Russ, could you briefly explain what an El Niño is?
Yeah, so El Niño and its counterpart La Niña refer to the variation of the temperature of the ocean waters in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of South America. So when those waters in that area are especially warm, that's an El Niño. When they're especially cool, it's La Niña. Why do we care here in Colorado about the ocean temperatures way down in the Pacific Ocean? It's because the temperature of those waters affect the thunderstorm systems and how intense they are in that area, which then has these ripple effects in influencing where the jet stream is as it comes across North America. And so those ocean temperatures, the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific can influence the weather patterns, you know, far, far away, including us here in Colorado.
Our landlocked little state here. So we mentioned the severe drought. Put this drought in perspective for us. I mean, we know it's been a dry winter, but from your perspective as a state climatologist, how bad is the drought across Colorado and especially along the Front Range?
It's been really bad. Our mountains in Colorado, in an average year, get a ton of snow, and that's the water supply for people, millions and millions of people in all directions. Once the snow melts and the water runs off in the rivers and streams, and it's been historically low this year in the mountains. Here, like along the Front Range and the Eastern Plains, it's been more of an acute drought in the last few months, where March was record warm, just shattering all the records. April was also warm, and we just haven't had much precipitation over that time period. So conditions have really degraded quickly along the Front Range and Eastern Plains. We've seen everything has just been parched and dry the last few months.
Yeah, I'm expecting to see some happy plants pretty soon. So what could an El Niño do to Colorado's weather in a drought year like this?
I think it's generally good news that we're putting La Niña in the rearview mirror and we have El Niño coming in. The influences of El Niño on us here in Colorado are not super strong, or the correlations are not super strong. They're much stronger to our north and to our south, and we sit kind of right in the middle. But in past El Niño years, especially as El Niño develops like in the fall or into next winter, those tend to be wetter times of year, wetter than average when we have El Niño in place, and also cooler than average. So globally, El Niño tends to raise the temperature of the planet. But here, like in the interior west of the United States, actually, we tend to see cooler than average conditions during El Niño years.
And about when might we expect that? I mean, September?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got two factors at play here. One is the summer monsoon season that tends to develop in say, mid-July through September.
Mm-hmm.
And the indications, at least at this point, are that the monsoon season will probably be an active one. And so that means probably more thunderstorm activity and rain in the latter part of the summer. And then the influences of El Nino probably get felt more strongly later in the fall and into next winter, or maybe even next spring, a year from now. And it might be that we avoid a multi-year type of drought with the conditions that emerge, hopefully, later on this year.
Okay, so relief, but not really until late summer. What about farms and agriculture? Will this late summer El Nino arrive in time to help them?
Again, I think the glass half full perspective is that this will be a help because the mountain snowpack has been so low. So storms like this one the last couple days, or if we get, regular heavy precipitation in the summertime, then that will help with the conditions for the agricultural lands. But in a lot of places, it might also end up being too little, too late, because the amount of water that we get in the rivers from snowpack
Yeah.
is so much more than what we can ever make up from summer thunderstorms.
Mm.
Obviously, summer rainstorms are helpful, and that gets the soils recharged. But if there wasn't water there to begin with in the rivers and streams, then it's hard to make up that deficit.
We saw early closures at ski resorts that often stay open into May or even as late as July. How much does a strong El Nino translate to the snowpack that we'll see next spring?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what we've all got our fingers crossed on, is that we can have a much better snow year next year. El Nino, especially on the shoulders of the season, the early season, the late season, it makes those big wet storms more likely. So I think that's where we can hope that the El Nino brings us those big snow dumps next winter. But it's, that's also so far out in the future right now that it's hard to put a lot of confidence in that. But
Yep.
We're always hopeful here, right? In
Yes.
Colorado, that we hope for those big snowstorms,
Mhm.
and that's what we can hope for at this point.
Zoom out for a moment. The Southwest is in a prolonged period of drought. How much could one El Nino alleviate that?
Yeah, a big El Nino potentially will help push things back in the right direction. So, zooming out to the full Southwest, it maybe pulls us out of the very, very worst conditions, but probably doesn't get us to, anywhere of solving these drought problems.
Russ Schumacher is Colorado's state climatologist and a professor of atmospheric science at CSU. He spoke with me about how a potential El Nino could affect the state later this year. We'll have links where you can learn more in the show notes and at KUNC.org. If you have feedback on this episode or any In The NoCo interview, drop us a line. You can email noco@kunc.org. That's NOCO@kunc.org. We'd love to hear from you. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.